Let's take a look at the Tainos. Similar to the Native Americans in the North, the Caribbean also had a group of people that were indigenous to its lands. The Tainos were the first New World people encountered by Christopher Columbus during his 1492 voyage. He first encountered these strange-looking Indians in Guanahani, and I use the term Indian very loosely, because Columbus had initially thought he arrived in India. Guanahani was the original Taino name of what is now modern-day San Salvador in the Bahamas. As Columbus would come to discover, the Taino were the principal inhabitants of most of the northern Caribbean islands, what is now Cuba, Hispaniola, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, and the northern Lesser Antilles. Fun fact: the Tainos are just one subgroup of the larger Arawak civilization. We will dive deeper into the different groups in other videos. But back to the topic at hand. At the time of European contact, the Taino were divided into several tribes. Western Taino tribes included the Lucayan of the Bahamas, the Saboni of central Cuba, and the inhabitants of Jamaica. These groups or tribes were led by male leaders known as caciques, who inherited their positions through their mother's noble line. Take note that even though men sat in the seat of power, their powers were determined by who their mothers were. The women in Taino culture served a significant role. Taino society was based on a matrilineal system and descent was traced through the mother. Women lived in village groups containing their children. The men lived separately. Because of this, Taino women had extensive control over their lives, their co-villages, and their bodies. Since they lived separately from men, they were able to decide when they wanted to participate in sexual contact, for pleasure or to procreate. This social structure partially shaped the views of the Europeans who came in contact with the Taino culture. They reportedly perceived women as marchar women, who had strong control over the men, which wasn't a norm in European society. This, along with the Tainos' peaceful temperament, made them easy targets to their would-be conquerors. Even though they were generally considered peaceful people, this doesn't mean that they weren't prone to violence or necessarily pushovers. They were constantly on the defensive, against neighboring groups of tribes, namely the Caribs, another subgroup within the Arawak civilization. But because the Europeans looked so different from them, and through ignorance linked to their own religious beliefs, the Taino initially thought the Europeans were godlike figures that fell from the sky. On the topic of their religious beliefs, the Tainos were polytheists. They created physical representations of these gods using small statues, made from wood, stone or bones. These statues are called zemis. Religious ceremonies were led by the caciques, who began these ceremonies by getting intoxicated. In this state of intoxication, it was believed that the cacique was able to communicate directly with the spirits and the gods. Like many of the other religions, the Tainos believed in life after death, and that at death their spirits would go to Koyaba, their version of heaven. Here's another fun fact: if you've ever napped in a hammock, smoked tobacco, or enjoyed barbecuing over a wood-fueled fire, you have actually been engaging in Taino culture unknowingly. For entertainment, the tribes had a ball game called Batu. The true nature, history, and function of the Batu is still contested. Historians still debate if the game was solely for enjoyment, or if it was also used to possibly resolve disputes between neighboring tribes. The game was played with a small rubber-like ball, and was played among two teams with players totaling up to 30 players each. The specific rules of the games are disputed, but per historical documents, it is believed that points would be lost when the ball came to a halt on the ground, or if it had been thrown out of bounds, meaning outside the stone boundary markers. The ball could only be struck from the shoulder, the elbow, the head, the hips, the buttocks, or the knees, but never with the hands. As for food, their diets were made up of vegetables, fruit, meat, and fish. There were no large animals native to the Caribbean, and they didn't eat humans, unlike their enemies, who were cannibals. But that's for another video. However, they captured and ate small animals, such as hootius and other mammals, earthworms, lizards, turtles, and birds. Manatees were speared and fish were caught in nets, speared, trapped in weirs, or caught with hook and line. Wild parrots were decoyed with domesticated birds, and iguanas were taken from trees and other vegetation. The population of the Taino when the Europeans arrived was believed to be somewhere between 2 to 3 million. Within 25 years of Columbus's arrival, most of the Taino had died from enslavement, massacre, or disease. By 1514, between 80% or 90% of the Taino population died. Because they had no written language, and everything was passed down through word of mouth, not many traditions survived the test of time. What we know now is based off artifacts, and the writings of European scholars. And history is usually written by the victors. In the end, their kind nature, and the greed of others got the best of them. Today, only a few descendants can be traced throughout Cuba, and most of the northern Caribbean islands. And there is no way to authenticate if any of the language that was spoken survived. Thank you for watching Prehistoric. Please like and subscribe for new videos.